Hi, Cecile. It's great to meet you today. And
Hello, Bruce. It's nice to meet you too.
yeah, and I remember you from that session that we had when we were doing that EMR tips and tricks when I was in your community there. So,
Yeah, absolutely. That's really I just wanted to talk to you and ask if you could just come to my clinic and just install all those templates for me and generally just, tell my staff how things are supposed to go at the office really.
yeah, well, I'm glad you really enjoyed the session. And do you mind if I just ask a couple questions first about what it is that you are thinking of? And
Yeah, sure.
so, when you were attending that session, what was it that what resonated with what you heard?
I think what I left with was this idea that somehow you figured out how to work through an office day and go home and it's over.
Hmm.
And I feel like I am in a more intimate relationship with my laptop than with my partner. So, I think there has to be a better way than what I'm doing right now.
Sounds like there's a lot of frustration in dealing with some of this technology.
It's frustration, and I feel really guilty because I'm not paying attention to my family like I should, and I feel a little bit ashamed because I feel like I'm the only person who goes home and works for another 5, 6 hours on my computer to make notes.
Yeah, yeah. So, what you heard at this session with some of the tips and tricks are things that resonated with how you might be able to save some time and have dinner on time and have more time with your family.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so, if you're thinking of that and that time is an issue, is there anything else that is going on at your office or in your work that you've spotted that you'd like to improve?
Yeah, it sounds like so I think the thing I struggle with is I don't like typing when I'm in with a patient because it feels
Right.
disrespectful and it feels like I'm not listening. But then the moment I leave, there's one of the staff there and there's an emergency or a phone call or something that needs to be attended to. And then that little bit of time that I thought I would have to do, make a note is just gone. And so I think there needs to be something in between that works better for me.
Right. So, time with the things that are going on with the EMR, and perhaps time as relates to how the flow of things work in your office as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think my life would be so much better if somebody else could just make all the notes.
I think I've heard that exact sentiment now and then again before. It's quite amazing how much this technology has changed our practice, and
Mhm.
certainly what's going on with the virtual technology with the time of this pandemic has changed our practice.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Although, I think, yeah, there's in some ways I actually like being on the phone a bit more because I can type when I'm on the phone a bit better than when
Right.
I'm face to face with patients.
Okay. So, there's a couple of things that have come up in there. You've certainly talked about having some EMR tips and tricks that resonate with you. There's some workflow things that are going in the office that sound like that they could be made a little leaner, a little tighter, more efficient.
Mhm.
And you already are bringing some skills to the table. You sound like perhaps typing is something that you're comfortable with rather than dictating. And so those are all things I think that are very much addressable. And I'm curious, what would you set as your priority of all those things?
Definitely finding a way to leave the work at the office would be the end goal, and I realize that's not the overnight goal, but I would definitely that would be what I would be working towards, that by the end of the day the administrative work is as done as the clinical work.
Okay. And of those things that we talked about contribute to that, what would be your number one thing that you'd like to have a better handle on?
Just the time it takes to actually write notes. I I keep thinking there has to be a shortcut where I don't have to type the same 200 words for
Okay.
every single visit.
Okay. So some of the templates, some of the things that you saw actually sat in the EMR are things that resonate with you. We had talked about in that session some ways of speeding up the prescription of medications. We had talked about being able to have focused visits where there was things that were included. We had talked about pre-populating some of the different templates. I find that if there's a specific focus in one area and you master that area, that can be much more efficient way and more sustainable way of changing what you're doing in your practice rather than trying to do everything at once in there. And so if you were to focus down on one part of what you saw in there around the EMR pieces that we talked about before, what one would you like to start with?
I think the templates look like the one that really looked very appealing, but I really, what it looked like to me was that you would just come and install them and then I would use them and it will be fine.
Yeah. And I think that's definitely a start. And being able to make sure that they fit in with that second priority that you were talking about around the workflow is something that we need to pay attention to as well. The two pieces go hand in hand.
Okay. So there's going to be work for me to do with that as well. So it's not as easy as it looks.
It is actually quite straightforward. And the beauty in what we're doing here is that we do have the PSP coach that helped set this up. And once we actually decide what we're going to put in the EMR, we can then have her work with you to actually be able to find the best fit for how it works in your workflow and be able to make sure that it is actually achieving what we want it to achieve. How does that sound?
That sounds really good. So where and when do we begin?
Well, let's dive in right now. And maybe we could share your screen. And so you can be the one actually doing the work because the templates are there in your EMR. We had set that up ahead of time with the PSP coach. And now it's just a matter of you being able to find them and figure out how it fits in your workflow.
Oh, fantastic. Well, let's go.
Okay.